right. Well, hello, and welcome to the History Speaks for October 1st, here for the Marathon County Historical Society. Yeah, welcome. For those of you who may be new, if you're stumbling upon this, welcome. This is the History Chats. It's a sort of midday opportunity to talk about some local history here in Marathon County. And it'll be about 10-15 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions afterwards. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, in the comment section, and we will do our best to address those after Gary's done. But so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gisselman, who is going to be talking about some school history here in the 20th century this week. So with that, I will turn it over to Gary.
Okay, thank you very much. Today we're continuing the saga of schools of Marathon County and WAUSAU. So today we carry it forth a little bit into the 20th century. Some big movements in the 20th century that we'll talk about today. The movement from rural schools to school districts. So a lot of schools, a lot of stories to tell. So we'll begin We'll begin in 1910 with the building of Grant School. As we noticed last time, there was a great movement in the 1890s in the WAUSAU School District to build new schools, and we saw that culminating in 1898 with the new high school. But soon into the 1900s, 1910, we came into Grant School was built off of Bridge Street in WAUSAU. It is today a very unusual building, still there, built by, designed by architects out of Milwaukee, Van Ryn and DeGalke. Quite an unusual, now listed as a potential or eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, still a school here as part of the WAUSAU School District. If you notice in the far right corner, there's something unusual with this. There was a sunroom built out, an extension for the kindergarten. So that extension on the right there was a kindergarten room specifically built for the new advances in schooling at that time dealing with kindergarten. This is not a very good shot, but it shows you coming at it from the other end, this kindergarten room on Grant School. Moving then into the rest of the buildings that were being built into the early parts of the 1900s. We have John Marshall School on the southeast side of WAUSAU, off of Lamont, built in 1922. Still there, still serving the neighborhood on the southeast side. There were a variety of additions to this school in 1947 and also in 2000. On the southwest side, we had Jones School, quite a unique building unto itself, built in 1931. But it came to be raised. It had an extension on it to the left. You can see what was happening in the background. It was eventually torn down and a new Jones School was built. But the granddaddy of all of WAUSAU schools in the 20th century was the Central School, coming to be called Horace Mann, a unique building on the occupying almost a half of a block. This is the 5th Street entrance between Scott Street and Jefferson Street. It was quite a landmark already when it was built in 1926. This headline from the WAUSAU Pilot, "New Central School adds to the beauty of the city." Really a quite distinguished building in the heart of the city. It had an auditorium. It had the gym spaces. The school itself came to be serving a variety of different purposes, lectures. It had a dairy exhibit at the central school. So a variety of different community events were being held here that really highlighted this building. Of course, the one thing that gave it notoriety throughout the years and into many years was the swimming pool or the natatorium. It had this was one of the unique features of this school from day one, really, at the central school. It was when it was raised, Horseman was raised after the new Horseman was built, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The continuing story of WAUSAU Schools carries on into the 1930s with the addition to the high school of this addition during the New Deal's Work Progress Administration. This addition on 7th Street going north was this addition built with New Deal funds on 7th Street. And then as we turn the corner onto Hamilton, the 1951 addition included an auditorium, and then it wrapped around on 8th Street to include some music rooms, agricultural and industrial arts classes on the 8th Street side of the new of WAUSA East, of what was then WAUSA East High School. Another picture of that 8th Street side, mostly industrial arts classes and some music rooms also. But the big story, of course, in the 20th century was the end of the rural schools. We had talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So we saw the map, all these one-room schoolhouses throughout the county. Each town had its own maybe 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, 6 schools. But in the late 1940s and into the 1950s, this all changed. Those one-room schoolhouses pretty much went away, and what happened was the creation of a variety of different school districts. So the WAUSA School District, the Everest, the Mosinee, all these communities then took upon themselves to be a part of a larger school district, whether it be Merrill, Wittenberg, Stratford, all these school districts that thus created, and all those one-room schoolhouses then were pretty much abandoned, and some were put into use, as we talked about Maple Grove. Some of those one-room schoolhouses were put back into use or continued service, but a lot of them went away, and the new schools thus were starting to be developed. And one of the new schools to be developed was in the Everest area. The Rothschild, Schofield, Weston people decided in the late 1950s that they wanted to create their school district as part of the new redistricting effort going on throughout the state of Wisconsin. So the folks here decided that they were going to be creating their own school district, and it started with at one time, this was called the DC Everest Senior High. It was built as a senior high in the late 1950s. We see DC, our prior screen, this screen shows DC Everest starting the groundbreaking for that school. So this served as a high school, and then eventually it turned into a junior high with the building of the Everest Senior High in 1970. And then in addition to the junior high and the high school, Everest created their middle school and a variety of different elementary schools throughout the whole district. Somewhat similar to the same history that's being done in Stratford, Athens, and the variety of other school districts within the county. So I want to turn a little bit then to what's happening with regard to some of the other more modern buildings happening within specifically here in WAUSA. The WAUSA West High School was built in 1970. The new WAUSA East High School, the WAUSA East or High School on 7th Street in Fulton was abandoned for apartments, and we built this new WAUSA East High School in 2004. The new John Muir Junior High School in 1961, and the new Horace Mann Junior High in 1993 that replaced the building on 5th Street in downtown WAUSA. And like the Everest School District, WAUSA elementary schools continue to grow. New Franklin Grant School is still here, but a variety of different schools throughout some rural parts of the county. Real Mountain, South Mountain, Satine, the Berlin School in the town of Berlin was closed. But these schools, mostly newer schools being built throughout the city, pretty much in the continuing, beginning in the 1970s, continuing to this present day. With regard to church high schools, I wanted to make mention of some of our church high schools: Faith Christian Academy on the west side of WAUSA, Wisconsin Valley Lutheran High School, 2004, as well as the Northland Lutheran High School in 1999. And then, of course, the Newman Catholic High School in 1951. The Catholic school system throughout all these years has had different manifestations. Just recently, the high school, this building started to include the middle school also. So a variety of different manifestations of the Catholic school system in WAUSA. Newman High still is an important part of the history of schools in WAUSA. But so those that maybe that was too quick of a venture through some of the 20th century schools, but I wanted to mention that we talked a lot about the buildings of WAUSA schools, Marathon County schools throughout these past sessions. And I wanted to emphasize a little bit that it wasn't just the buildings, but it was the people. The story of education, the story of schools in Marathon County basically comes back to the school, to the students. The students here in this little early schoolhouse in Marathon County. Some of the boys maybe not there because they were on the farm. The girls coming in, learning the lessons from their teacher. It's about those students growing up, going to school, growing up and becoming great citizens of this county. And this was, of course, happening throughout the county, rural school systems, public school systems throughout the county. So it wasn't just, and we continued to the current day. So here are some teachers that were a part of that, part of the people that were a part of the school systems throughout our history here in Marathon County. Mr. Johnson, teacher of history, Ms. Larson, a librarian, all a part, I think, of the great dynamics of education and the teaching of those students throughout those years when our first, basically in 1850, when those first teachers started to teach people in those early log cabins until the current day. And it wasn't just the teachers, of course, but it was the boards of education, those town leaders who built those rural schools, architects who built those schools, who designed those schools, and Van Rena de Galke that we talked about today. All those people that were essential in putting this system of education of schools together here in Marathon County, which leads me to the talk about next week, because next week we're going to talk about that normal school that taught all those teachers that would go out into the county and teach in those rural schools. And then we'll bring it up to date on that same block, talking about what we now know as UW Stevens Point at WAUSA. So that is next week. Again, 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years on that one block off of Stewart Avenue. And we'll be talking about that next week as you join us for History Chats. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ben.